Ah, yes. If I didn't know better, I'd say I'm looking at the instrument cluster of a 2023 RAV4 Hybrid. But I do know better, and I know actually that is what I'm looking at. So tell me about this 223, you ask. Boots, is it any different from the beginning generation of this particular RAV4 Hybrid, i.e. the 2019? Well, there's been some changes, there's been some tweaks. If only we had a 2019 to compare it to. Oh, we do. Stay with us. So tell me, if you were to be a hybrid vehicle, what kind of hybrid would you be? Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to be really popular, you should be one of these right here. This is your 2023 RAV4 Hybrid Limited. So we're all limited in one way or another, but in this case, limited means one of the top of the trim lines of all these things. There's several, and the one we're going to be looking at next to this one, which is the 2019, over there, is a XSE, which is a little bit different in trim lines. But what is really interesting to me is these two vehicles are very, very similarly equipped as far as the good stuff it has on it. They both have panoramic roofs, for example, which I really like because it lets a lot of light in the cabin and makes it seem a lot more spacious, even though it's pretty spacious to begin with. But there have been tweaks to the 2023. Mainly, I think the most significant tweaks, well, there's two things that immediately come to my mind. The first is all across the board now, exclusively, I believe. I'll have to double check just to make sure there's not a lower trim line that has a nickel metal hydride. God, I can't talk today or any other day. Nickel metal hydride hybrid battery, which is what we have on the 2019, but everybody else gets lithium ion. And that's an interesting change for a lot of different reasons because, believe it or not, those two batteries are very different. The lithium ion tends to be, for the same amount of weight, put out more power. But the power characteristics as far as charging, recharging, and everything else are a little different. And all the manufacturers have been hard at work addressing some of the shortcomings, if you will, of the lithium ion battery. And they've done a real good job. One of the things about it is that, well, one thing right off the bat is it's more expensive. Secondly, they've had in the past been more sensitive to cold. They don't perform as well as the nickel metal hydrides as far as when the temperatures get really, really low. And there's just a bunch of other stuff I won't go into because it involves physics and a whiteboard and a feller in a white coat with a pencil protector, and we're not going there. But whether you want to or not, lithium ion batteries are what is now powering most of the hybrids. Yeah, and with Toyota still uses the old nickel metal hydride batteries in a lot of vehicles, actually. And I'm delighted by that because I prefer them. One of the reasons being it's real proven battery technology because they've been using it for a very long time. And they last and last and last. And I'm still not convinced that the lithium animal lasts as long. But that's me. I don't know. I can't prove that. I don't have evidence yet. And we'll know once these things have been on the road 10, 15 years. But if you go back to the original Prius, and especially the second generation, which started in 2004, there's a lot of them going around on the road with a lot of miles on them right now that still have the original batteries, which were the nickel metal hydride. So there you go. Now on this 2023 Limited, we have a little bit different feature set than what you'll find on the 2019 that we're comparing it to over there. For one thing, this one's red, and that one over there is silver. That's one thing. Then that other car behind there, that's blue. So that's different. But this particular vehicle has something that is becoming more and more common, and it's very, very useful, and that is a 360 camera array. Meaning that you have cameras all around the car, and you have a 360-degree view when you're backing up and making some low-speed parking maneuvers, which are extremely useful to have because it gives you the ability to not crash into things, which is always laudable. It also has a lot of changes in terms of the display system. Especially your central touchscreen display. It's bigger, and it's using the new Toyota format that they're using in all their newer vehicles, which I will have a lot to say about, because let's say I've yet to be enamored with it, but it's where it's going. You know, everybody's trying to upgrade everything all the time, and this is what our hybrid's doing. But as with the 2019, you have a very interesting drivetrain. You have a 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine, a dynamic force four-cylinder, which I'll get into in a moment. And you have front-wheel drive most of the time, but you also have rear-wheel drive, meaning all-wheel drive when you need it, like in situations where you're slipping. No matter whether you're slipping in the dry or on the ice or in the snow, and it provides power to the rear wheels, but it is completely separate from the front powertrain. It has its own proprietary rear motor back there that turns on when it needs to turn on, and otherwise just coasts along. But it also does one other great thing, is it provides regenerative braking, which not only helps save your brake landings because the drag of the car going through the electric motor, which swaps over to a generator, helps slow the car, but you also have the benefit of charging that battery back, because that's what it does. So instead of just having the front drivetrain doing that, the rear drivetrain always helps in those circumstances. And it's really interesting. There's a display you can watch in the car, and the rear-wheel drive system, it may have been misleading what I just said. It just comes in when traction's bad, but it comes in all the time. There's all kinds of particular scenarios where the car will get better mileage and be more efficient and handle better and do all kinds of things when the rear wheels are involved. And the incredibly powerful algorithms in the computer system that runs all this knows what those particular circumstances are, and therefore pops your rear wheels into the party to help. So that's a cool thing. But enough of that. It's time we did some comparing in terms of the engine compartment. Have there been changes since 2019? I'm not so sure. So here we have 2.5 liters of inline four mounted transversely. And this is a dynamic force engine that you can always tell these dynamic forces because they use that oil right there, that 016 right there. But it's an amazingly advanced power plant, and it has, to just show you how generally efficient this engine is, it has one of the highest degrees of efficiency as far as your thermal component, meaning that it's much more efficient with its energy generation. More of it gets channeled into actually propelling whatever you're trying to propel it with than heat bleeding off. Look it up on the internet if you want a further explanation, but it's very interesting actually. But this engine has no belts. There are no belts on this engine. Why is that? Well, like all electrics and like a lot of hybrids, things that used to be powered by the engine are now powered by electric motors, including things like on this car has a real elaborate electric oil pump setup that increases the efficiency of everything by heating up the oil quickly in some areas when you start the car, because as I always talk about, the most dramatic part of emissions output by internal combustion engines is right when they're cold and started up. That's when they're really dirty and nasty. But once they're warmed up, all the catalysts and everything else get to come into play, and just general efficiency of the combustion process is much, much better once the temperature comes up. Not all the way. I mean, then we get into turbocharging and things like that where you don't want, well, anyway, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, because this engine right here is not turbocharged. Although, there is a turbocharged version of this engine. You can do anything with these little 2.5 liter dynamic force engines. But that's the basic part of the engine, 2.5 liters there, cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4, right in there. And over here we have your electrics. This is the primary part of the electric motor system as far as what we can see from here. Most of it is actually tucked away in the other components, like the transmission, which incidentally on both vehicles, the 2019 and this 2023, is a continuously variable transmission, electronically controlled, and it's completely different from most CVTs in that it's primarily electric motor driven inside there. It's fascinating, the difference between the two. But for all intents and purposes, it's still a continuously variable, just like a belt-driven continuously variable transmission is. And then it has a limitless number of ratios, and it changes depending on engine speed and what your requirements are for propulsion and how fast you want to go and all that. Well, it does all that for you without doing it with set ratios. However, when it's in manual mode, you do have a select ratio of, what is it, 6, 7, 8. I'll tell you when I'm driving the car. I don't remember right offhand, but you'd think I would. But anyway, if you look very carefully here, here's some more of our electricals, which are always denoted by the orange hue. So don't touch that. Don't even look at that. There's too much electrons. And you come around here and you have two cooling systems. One is actually, you have two reservoirs for your cooling systems. One is for the electric motor cooling and battery cooling system, and the other is for the internal combustion engine cooling system. So take a good look at this. Take a gander. Freeze frame it. Look at it, okay? Because this 219 horsepower, by the way, generating little engine is basically the same as, I say basically, I think it's identical. Here we come over to our 2019, which being in my household and having just under 70,000 miles on it in 3.5 years, well, is it 3 years? Yeah, 3.5 years now, almost. It's less than 3.5. It's 3.2 years of driving, which I've done maybe 10% of. Yeah, the woman, she goes a lot of places. She's a traveling girl. But anyway, this is what it looks like after 70,000 miles. Dirty. But everything else, if you look at the componentry on this particular 2019, it's pretty much identical. They didn't change anything major coming out with the 2023. And that's because they didn't need to. See, and here's our little thing. 016 right there. But what can I tell you? Well, here's some useful information. I know I don't impart that very often, but in this case, we've had this car for 3.5 years, 70,000 miles, and I've done, other than changing the oil, which I've done many times already, we've had zero trouble with this thing. It's been great. I've been averaging, or we've been averaging in the wintertime about 37, 38 miles per gallon. Summertime, when it's warmer, we get anywhere from 42 to 44 miles per gallon. Very, very efficient for an SUV, and it is an SUV. It has a lot of room in it for all kinds of things, especially dogs. It also has a decent amount of ground clearance, so if you have a situation where you're living in a rural location, the roads are not always improved, or you just want to go out to camping or something like that, it does fine. It does well. It's not a hardcore off-roader, mind you, but the all-wheel drive system works very, very well. I especially recommend it for snow, because it does great in the snow. Especially if you have some of these, I don't normally do this, but these are your Michelin cross-continent, crossed up. Well, they're extremely good all-season tires. Very distinctive looking too. Now on our 2023, we have a different tire, but also Michelin, a Primacy AS is what it comes standard with. And I believe the tire size is exactly the same on both these vehicles. Where is it? Where is it? We're at 225 60 R18. Woo! Let's go over here. 2020. And these are the Michelin, Cross Climate, that's what I meant to say, Cross Climate 2s. And these are, hey, what's wrong with you? Gimbal! I call him Gimbal because he used to host the Today Show. 225 60 R18s. So you see, 18-inch wheels on both of these. And the standard tires that come with this are not near as good in the snow or the muck, but they're very good tires, and they're also very, very good in terms of mileage. Better than the ones that are on the 2019 over there with the hood up, because those tires are a little stickier because they're more geared towards snow. That's why they do have the hazardous 3 mountain marking on them and stuff like that. I don't normally talk about tires, especially aftermarket, but I'm saying this for all you people that own RAV4 hybrids or at RAV4s at all, or people that have a car. Those are really good tires. That's the second set we've had, and I love them. I think they're great all around. And so does Consumer Reports. My friends down there in East Ham, it's over there. You go down the 97, and you get on, well, it's that way, but they're about an hour from here. And they test them tires, and this is that's one of their top rated tires. So, boy, did I get off the subject. Imagine that. But anyway, have we covered all this? Okay, you got your all-wheel drive system with your separate rear drive system that is electrically only. No mechanical link to the front drivetrain. And one other question I have at this juncture. There's no paddle shifters here, but there is a manual mode right down there, which we'll go into in great detail in just a minute. But anyway, bottom line, engine's unchanged since 2019. And from everything I've been able to glean so far, it's good they didn't touch it because it's a great drivetrain. Okay, moving on. So you've gotten an inkling of how the 2019 and 2023 are similar, but they go their separate ways in a variety of little ways. Come with me, my friends. I will show you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have tried and tried to find an angle to give you a good shot of the instrument cluster on our RAV4 Hybrid Limited with the high-tech electronic, fully virtual display system here, and I can't do it. I mean, it's really strange, but I've tried in daytime, nighttime. I mean, well, nighttime it'll probably be all right. And believe it or not, when you're actually looking at it with your own eyes and not through the lens of a camera, it's fine. It's okay. But the problem I have is when I'm trying to photograph it, it's at a strange angle that I'm sure was derived after lots of research. If I put up where my eye is here, roughly, see, it looks fine. But if I try to get closer, oh, that's not too bad. But anyway, okay, you can probably hear the engine is running at the moment, and that's because the engine is cold. I just started the car, and it is 37 degrees outside, so it will take a few minutes for it to warm up to speed, and then the engine will probably shut down and we'll be on battery power. But anyway, I'm not real enamored with this particular display. The XSE from 2019, which I will show you also, has a interesting situation in that it's both analog and some virtual stuff. If I remember right, and we'll cover this when I get over, and when the car's here, where the woman goes, she took the car, we can look at it, and you will see that it has virtual elements and it has analog elements. And this one of course goes completely virtual. And what can I say? I mean, as these things go, it's fine, but overall I don't like it as much as a good old analog setup. It just is not as clear. And another thing about this that's unusual to me is you have this central thing where you can adjust the settings. Like if I go over to 1, I can adjust the settings. Well, I should be able to. No? I've had a lot of trouble with this, figuring this out. Well, anyway, if you go over to one side, there's 3 different displays that you can use as far as what is being shown to you in the center of the faux analog instrumentation. You got your miles per gallon, you got your driving ratio, which is the total amount of time it's spent running electrically, which is, I guess, useful. I don't really know if that's something you need, but there you go. And then over here on the right side, we have your driving distance. That measures, this is something that more and more cars are doing that I do not understand why they bother. So every time you drive the car, it tells you how far you drove it on that particular trip and how long it was. I don't understand the necessity for this information in my life. Maybe in yours, that would be a real practical thing to have, but other than looking down and saying, God, I can't believe it took 48 minutes to get to work today. What good is that? I don't understand. But then again, I'm a bit mental. So there we go. That's basically the lion's share of the adjustments. Now, if we go over to the central screen, which incidentally, this is, I believe the old one is about 9 or 10 inches, and this is like 12.5. It's much more widescreenish, and the beauty of this central display that I really approve of heartily is Toyota has brilliantly placed it such that when you're looking at it, it's as high as it can go without obstructing any view up here. In other words, I can see the end of the hood, and now you can too. It's a very, very good placement of the screen because it doesn't interfere with your left, right. There we go. Now we're on full electric power. It doesn't interfere with your ability to see right in front of you, and that's good. That's a very intelligent design. And believe me, there's so many cars nowadays where the screen goes up a lot higher than that and interferes. There's interference, which, you know, probably doesn't bother most people at all, but I find it tiresome and irritating. Here we go. Let's see, General. Hello, General. A date night keyboard. Geez. Well, by the way, we're on a particular thing here where, let's go through here. Woo, wow, hey, slow down. Vehicle customize. You can customize the lights, the door control, and that's, of course, when you're unlocking the car, if you want to unlock all of them, or you want to unlock some of them. 2-press unlock to do the rest. You can do the driver's door and leave the others locked if you live in a high crime area, and or you can have all the doors unlocked with one grasp. Lock door when opened. I don't know what that means. That seems contrary. So we go back here. This is what am I trying to show you here? Oh, I know what I'm trying to show you. display. That's what I'm looking for. Now, right now we're on automatic. Now, I do not like the white screen. I find it lacking sufficient contrast to be really super legible. So, you can take it off of automatic, like so, and put it on nighttime, and then it's dark, and I find that much better. Again, personal choice, but and see, the map is that way too, and I just find it a hell of a lot easier to see and navigate with it darker. The big white screen. I first noticed this on the Tundra, the new 2022 Tundra, and I didn't like it then, but then I discovered that, yeah, all you got to do is just put it on dark, and it's much nicer. But there's other things. I mean, there is no tuning knob. There is a volume knob, but no tuning knob. Now, believe it or not, I find that to be a great, see, I have to enable audio. Another thing, you guys probably know about all this if you've been keeping track of things, probably better than me, but more and more cars are like assigning a particular person to be the main driver, and then someone else is in the car. They have to select themselves on there. So the idea being that depending on the vehicle, it can adjust a lot of the settings that are fine-tuned to the person driving. The stuff that's useful is like seat position, mirror position, that kind of thing. But this can put favorite radio stations and all that kind of thing for a specific person. I think it's ridiculous. I really think that's a waste of time.
I turned to her to apologize.
Oh my God, radio drama. But well, here's what I'm gonna have to do there. There we go. There we go. So you can select your favorites and everything else, but having been a veteran Toyota user and using the interface of their systems, the latest new system I don't like at all. I find it, for one thing, it takes a good mash on here to get it to go where it's going. Energy flow. Now I'm so glad it did that, because this is what I don't like. Check out this graphic. I don't understand that graphic because it just doesn't look good to me, and I'm probably trouncing on somebody who designed this, and I'm not being personal, but I think that looks less than good. And the old style, which I'll show you in the XSE, the 2019 version of the RAV4 Hybrid, the graphics are just better. And so, with this kind of thing, manufacturers are spending more and more time focusing on this kind of stuff. And I don't really believe, in my personal opinion, that they're nailing anything. I think they're going backwards in a lot of ways. But that's just me. Still fully useful. I'm sure a lot of people will love this screen, and it is nice and big, but the screen that's in the XSE, which is a little smaller, I think has just as much usable real estate, really. I mean, this is a little bit wider from left to right, but overall, I don't know. And this, by the way, is not, there are different displays, as far as, especially with your instrument cluster here, depending on your trim level, and if you have an optional fully digital system on the car. So I'll get into that a little bit more at some point if I remember, because I actually was in communication with Toyota about this because I was vexed and confused. But apparently there's like the optional system now where it's completely virtual, and that's what everybody's doing. There are pretty much, right off the bat, I can't think of anybody where there's exceptions. And they're trying to, like almost kind of mimicking the glass cockpits that the aircraft have now. But that's a whole different environment, and it's like heads-up displays. Yeah, they make sense if you're in combat in a fighter plane. But in cars, no, not so much. So, what do we have in our further central stack? Well, this is unchanged. The climate control system is very straightforward, very easy to use. As I always mention, the one thing that seems to be becoming more and more standardized across the board with cars in general, from manufacturer to manufacturer, is the basic operation of your climate control system. Because you see your temperature right here, and I have it synced right now, and if I desync it like that, then I can adjust it over here, you see. And you can have your individual zone, your left and right zones, to make you happy. And but I usually stick with the sync. You know what's weird about that is how it was only registering on one side. I'm not even going to try to figure that one out. But you go on down and we have both heating and ventilation right here on your seats. We have the heat on at the moment. It's very toasty. It's very nice. And below that we have our power port right here. Then we have our standard USB right there. Then we have our QI phone charger here, which with my camera, which has a case on it, it seems to work better than previous generations of that for some reason. Maybe they've done something to it, maybe they haven't. But with our car, for example, if I try to use it, it can easily get dislodged and you lose your charging just because it's not seated on there properly. So the best I've ever seen is the Mini, which has a clamp, literally, that you clamp it in there. Okay, now here's our main transmission and otherwise control center. And this is also where we select, well, we'll go with our driving modes first. First of all, this does have a trail setting. And look at there, if you put it on trail, which I just did, there we go. It's normal and trail, you see. And what does that mean? Well, it changes, I'm assuming it primarily changes gearing a little bit, because that's something you can do with this type of motor-driven, continuously variable transmission. You got all kinds of options as far as how the vehicle itself will react in various driving modes. See, so the trail is just one little dinky there. But here we are on normal now. Now if I go to sport, look out. As usual, what is sport always? Red. Sport means red. That's basically what it is. You know, don't do nothing to anything else. It just makes things red. And then you push it to go to normal. And then we go to left, we go to eco, which is where I normally leave it. Because one of the purposes of a hybrid is to maximize your fuel economy and range. And so I leave it on eco, which helps a little bit. You also have an eco setting right here on your climate control. And that just does all kinds of things to help that. To help, it just increases the efficiency of it. Does it not work quite as well? Well, I'm assuming if you live in Arizona or someplace like that where it's 150 degrees in the summertime, you might not want to use the eco because you need maximum power out of your air conditioning system. So, but otherwise, most of the time, if you leave it on eco, and it notes down here, heat and cool. In both situations, it tries to maximize the amount of time that the engine is not running. It all ties into the main computer and everything else, so they're all looking, it measures all kinds of things. Like everything else as far as the drivetrain is constantly looking to be as efficient as possible. So that's what that does. Now your shifter here is your conventional. Right here, your mechanic, cool. And you want to go into manual mode, you go over here. And it's at 5, 4, 3, 2, 6. It has 6 speeds. And that works fine, although it doesn't seem as crisp as it does not have the paddle shifters, as you can see right here. That's the way you have to do it if you put it in manual mode. And it stays in the gear you select, but it seems like when you first are shifting manually, it's not crisp. It takes a couple of seconds for it to adjust to that new speed that you selected. Well, it's not a problem, it's just the way it is. And then we have, while I'm still down here, we have our EV mode. And EV mode, which I always call the drive-through mode, because if you go to a drive-through, let's say you go to your donut store, or you go to your Burger King, or your Wendy's, whatever, and you're sitting there in line, odds are, if you drove there, you'll have plenty of battery power. If you put on the eco thing, the engine will just stay off the entire time you're in that line, and you just put along and not use any fuel and not put out any emissions, and that's a good thing. So this is what, I mean, I haven't been shot down by Toyota yet, but this is what is missing on the Tundra Hybrid, in my opinion. There is no EV mode that I saw. So, and that's one of the best things. Well, the car's just moving and shaking and starting up and doing all kinds of stuff. I've noticed this a lot with hybrids lately, is when the engine starts, when you're sitting still like this, it often, there's movement. There's a little bit of rocking to things, and I'm not sure why that is. It's not a problem. It's just doing it, and I know our old Prius never did that. Okay, what do we have in here? We have our viral kit. we have 2 USB-C ports, and it's fairly roomy in there. It's not the king of all consoles, but it has a fair amount of room in there, and that's good. Now let's have a look here. What do we have here? Well, it looks like it's leather, but it's not. It's Tech Sport, Sportex, Syntex Sport. Oh God, I don't have the Moroni with me. Is there a Moroni in this car? Let's look here. I don't see one in here. I can never remember the name of it, but this is a synthetic that beautifully apes leather, and it seems to be, at least on, I have it on one of my vehicles that has now got 50,000 miles on it, and it seems quite durable. And it's also a good thing because it's also offers a degree of water repellency, which means it's easy to clean if you have like sprinkles from your donuts all over the place. You can clean it very easily, but it's very comfortable. These seats are good. I would give them a definite good rating. And I would also note, as you're looking at it, because it's also used around the car, this is a very nice interior because it's tasteful. It's not over the top. It's not garish. It's kind of classy. Similar to what you might expect with the term limited, you know what I'm saying? So up here, we have all these things. Let's open up this. Whee! There goes the panorama. It goes that far and the further and the further. And there we close it. And then, of course, over here, I think they're on the opposite sides on our car. Well, anyway. And there we have the shade that comes in if you want to take the outside and put it away. There you go. But we're going to let it in there because we like that. So, shall we vamonos to the rear? This is the big thing, the most important thing on these. Oh my God, there's puddles of mud and things. Why did I park here? Jeez, what an idiot. Hang on. You know what we're going to do? We're going to get in over here. I can't believe I did that. Ah, engine's firing up. Now, as you can see, we don't open 90 degrees. We open about 80 degrees, I'd say, 79.6 degrees. The front seat on the passenger side right here is all the way back. So this would be the limited amount of leg room that you're going to get, and it's still got plenty. Like all these SUVs, like I say, this is the most important thing. These compact SUVs will surprise and dazzle you with their excellent rear seat room considering their external size. And as you can see, we got a little bit of a drive shaft tunnel here, which does not have a drive shaft in it because, you know, as I've stated, the rear drivetrain is completely electric and self-contained. But what goes in through this here is just wires and stuff right there. And this one, you got like a magazine pouch right here, but you don't have one over here because this person sitting behind the driver is illiterate, clearly. So don't even bother, you know, trying to get that person to read because they won't do it. So we have just the central map light, not individual map lights. Kind of surprising. It should have individual LED map lights in my opinion, but it doesn't. And down here we have our vents for our AC and heat, and then we have right here USB-Cs, 2 of them, you see, for your devices. Because my God, you have a lot of devices. You people and your devices. All right, and here's our armrest, the all-important test. Yeah, that's a real nice, both the length is good and the height is very good for the armrest. Now it matters. If you're going to be stuck back here for like hours at a time while you're driving to, Dollywood or wherever, you want to be comfortable back here. And this has everything you need for accommodation, because it's got the room and it's got the comfortable seats. There's not much lateral support. It's pretty flat, but that's kind of common. And you would think, see, there's a little bit of a bolster here, sort of, a little bit, individual contouring, but it's pretty flat. But that's normal. I mean, that's as much about access than anything else. And then you can fold down your seat back like so, if you so desire, which is a good thing. Yeah. There we are. So, have we looked in the back yet? I don't remember. Should we go in the back? There may be an edit here if I've already detailed the back of the car, but I don't think I have. Have I? Well, I can't remember. Too many cars, too little time. So let's go have a look, just to be on the safe side. It's very classy, this trim, incidentally. The limited trim on the outside is really nice. I don't think we have been back here yet. This is nice because this is this little containerized is your pool cue that they give. No, it's not a pool cue. It's actually a cargo net, which is nice. And you got your cargo shade, your concealment device. I'll put that right there. And there's a good amount of room, and it has a fairly low lift over height. Actually, it's a kind of a perfect lift over height, because it splits the difference between really low and really high. And all that depends on, like I say, on the day, what you're loading into the car as to whether or not you want it higher or lower. Now, this is one of my favorite bits right here. You got underneath here, I can get my finger in there, and there we go. A spare. And there's your jack. And there's this little pouch right in here, if you can see that. That's where you got your tools, everything you need in there. And you have a goodly amount of room. Now, an interesting thing is you can, if you're so inclined, you can actually get a full-size spare in this thing. If you want, you can do that. It is allowed, and there is room enough to do it. It may ride a little bit higher because you do have some adjustability about how you use this. And you can flip this over. See this surface here? You can flip this over if you want the hard side instead of the foamy padded side, for carrying your items like your bricks and things like that. And so all in all, for the size, excellent room. They're all about the same these days, and they're real close to the same in this size class. And this class of vehicle, the compact SUV, has become probably the most popular of all of them right now. God, I can't believe it. Look, you look worked in. I mean, come on. Well, it is early, and I haven't had breakfast, so. But there we have it. There's your interior. Ugh. Now I'm going to move out of this mud now. But there you go. It's it really is a mix of almost Spartan but not Spartan, and yet has all the features you want. It's really, I like this interior a lot because it's got a real practical side to it. I probably like it most because ours has got so much crap in the car right now, as you're going to see, that it's filthy when you have the cattle dogs in the car all the time, and there's horses around and mud. Oh God, your car gets dirty. But this car, the RAV4 is built for this kind of thing, especially the hybrid version. Well, naturally, I forgot something important. This particular array of instrumentation, which is to the left, just above the driver's left knee, has got some real good stuff on it, including a heated steering. But here's my favorite, and it also has the, this little guy right here is wonderful because it is a de-icer, where in the basic area of where the windshield wipers are, so that it helps you break up the ice and stuff. to get those things out during the wintertime if you park outside like many of us do. But here is our camera view system. And looky there, we spin. That's not the color of this car though. I don't approve of that. But we have different things we can look at. Look at that, the virtual wheels and the square part, but we're going all the way around, and there's all that mud that I was walking in. Anyway, I do love these camera situations. Now this one here is, that's the one we were originally looking at. What else do we have? What other choices do we have? View under the vehicle? Huh. Vehicle body color. Oh, hey, let's fix this. Okay. Let's go back here, back here, and back here. There we go. Now everything is the way it should be. You got to have, in your virtual, you got to have the same color as the car is. How do you stop that? Pink. You hit pause just like that. And you can study. You can study where you're going and everything else. So I always love these camera systems. The only bad thing, here's the only downside. If you smash the front of the car or you knock off one of your mirrors or do anything like that, the mirrors are a hell of a lot more expensive than they used to be because they have cameras in them that shine down on the ground that have to be replaced along with it. So that's the only thing. If you're careful and you don't smash into anything, there is no downside whatsoever to having those cameras. Okay, what else is over there? Anything else? Nothing that matters. Oh, this thing is the automatic dimmer for your headlights. I love the fact that Toyota does it this way. It's a button that you turn on and off. Rather than having to flip around with this and finally find the setting that lets it manual control take over and everything. There's so many cars that is so much more complex than it needs to be. Toyota's smart. It's just a button. You turn it on, you turn it off. So anyway, all right. Sorry about that. Sorry I forgot to do that camera thing. I love them cameras. Well, alrighty then. So what do we have now? Well, this is your 2019 RAV4 Hybrid XSE, trim level. And as you can see, the instrument cluster is very different. What we have here is we have an analog, and then we have a virtual in the middle. And I really like this cluster a lot more than what's in the Limited, because one of my things I love about it is you have all these different settings you can go through to do all kinds of things with the screen. Like in the economy area here, the eco zone, that's where you're at. And the audio's off at the moment. But see, there's one of the graphics for the hybrid system. So you know I got 3/4 of a battery left, 3/4 of the hybrid battery, which is the nickel metal hydride version. And then down here, this tells you what wheels are being activated when you're under drive. In other words, this is one of the places where you learn that the rear drive system on the RAV4 Hybrid is used all the time. It's not just when you're in the snow or something like that. It comes in at all kinds of places to advance your fuel economy more than anything else, but it also enhances handling and just general overall drivability. It's like a fully functional type of all-wheel drive system, in other words. And there's that trip distance, trip time thing that I do not understand why they do that. But there you go. And then we go over here, and these are all the different settings for all your different technologies. And there's a further vehicle setting thing right here. And there's no messages there. Okay. But we have all this different stuff here, like your rear cross traffic alert, on, all this stuff is turned on with this car. And the lane tracing, I believe that's what that is. That's off? Is that off? Yeah. I turned that off because I don't like that. My wife doesn't like it. We just don't like it. That's personal choice. So, but anyway, so you have all these wonderful settings here, and I just appreciate this a lot more. I think it's a lot more versatile. And unless there's something that I can't figure out, on the 2023 Limited Hybrid RAV4. This is just a lot more versatile. It has a lot more settings you can play with, which is good. Now over here, this is fun. I can go to the menu here and go to Info and go to Eco. There we go, sorry. And see, look at the difference in graphics. I think this is just a much better graphic than the graphic they use in the new one when they changed everything. Now you can probably tell right off the bat that this is a much smaller screen, and it is smaller, but again, it has that great architecture where it's below the line of the hood, so it doesn't in any way obstruct your seeing out of the car, and yet it's nice and high, so it's easy for your eyes to go from up here down to here very, very quickly. And there you go. And then it has this wonderful thing known as a tuning knob, which I miss on the new one quite a bit. So go back to map here, and there we go. So there you go. Oh, now this of course is the, you do not have one of these, but I made this. This is the Silver Hornet, you see. This is from the, well, I'll show you.
Yes, service. It's a little overdue for a service, unfortunately.
Fortunately, this Silver Hornet is much more sturdy and is in one piece, you see. But anyway, you got to have that in your car if you want. And this is where your battery charges, your cell phone charges. We usually don't use it instead because that's where the Silver Hornet stays. But everything else is pretty much the same. You got the exact same controls here to determine your settings. And this one I have trouble with all the time because it's so dirty. Because you might have noticed, there we go, it's now on Eco. You might have noticed that this car is what is the word, filthy? I think it's because it regularly, almost daily, yep, it does daily, have dogs in it. And horses try to ride in it. They like to ride in the back in there usually, but it's, when you live in the horse farm life, you have these things you have to deal with. And I can tell my wife's been driving the car because it's pretty much almost out of gas. So, and yet we still have 66 miles left on this tank, and 358 miles have been traveled so far. So, anyway, that's some of your changes that have been made. And there is some flickering there, but it goes away if this is at the right orientation there. But anyway, that's interesting too, because obviously a slightly different type of system. And it would naturally, it's only this center one that is virtual. Okay, that's your 2019. Thank you. When I was growing up, we didn't have any of these things. So now the whole generation, including engineers and car designers, have grown up with computers and laptops, and I think even more important, smartphones and tablets even are much, much greater influence on what's in your car. And so we're turning the car into a big tablet. And as I used to refer to Star Trek, when Star Trek The Next Generation popped up, after I'd been watching the original Star Trek as a kid, there was so much about that show I didn't like. I never think it was near as good as the original as far as the script writing was concerned. But it had its moments, and it certainly had some wonderful people in the cast that were all great. But anyway, it looked to me like they were flying a big microwave oven, because instead of having like physical controls and the few things that the Enterprise had, it was like beep beep boop beep boop, like they're programming some rice in the microwave rather than navigating a starship. But I don't know. But we've come that way in cars now, but it's a real bad idea, because all these things I find to be incredibly distracting. So what they're trying to do about that is they're saying, well, look, you know, most of the stuff that you need to do in your car, you can just use what is amounting to having Siri in your car. And I don't like Siri, period. I have Siri. Siri is turned off on everything I own. We don't have any kind of Siri anything, because there's something about it that just seems stupid. And the fact that you may have noticed the way I talk, it can't understand me half the time anyway. I try various accents. I try various dialogues. I say, hey, what's the matter with you? Wait, hey, turn on the lights, what? So none of it works for me, and what really bothers me is when the system is constantly listening to you and you're talking to somebody in the car, and all of a sudden the car starts talking to you. You say, no, I don't know who Jim Morrison is, or what the heck, what? So anyway, this is a problem I'm having with, I try not to even focus on this stuff at all, because I'm much more interested in the physical aspects and the performance of the car and how it is to drive, most importantly. Is it stable? Is it quiet? Does it handle well? Does it have decent acceleration? Does it have good braking? Is there lots of room in it? Is it durable? Does the traction control systems on it and the four-wheel drive systems, how well does it work? All that kind of stuff is where is my primary focus. And on this RAV4 Hybrid, I think one of the reasons this is one of the most popular SUVs in the country is it does all the physical driving part. It does very, very well. It's got a lot of room in it for its size. It's a fairly compact vehicle, but not as compact as the original RAV was, but because everything grows. But it drives really nicely, and more importantly than anything else, it gets really good gas mileage while delivering very good performance. I mean, 219 horsepower for a vehicle that weighs, I don't know, this probably weighs about 3,800 pounds, guessing. I'll put it at the bottom of the screen if I remember what the exact curb weight of this is, but I'm going to say 3,800 pounds. Just guessing. And that's with they're lighter now than the 2019 as far as the actual drivetrain weight, because the lithium-ion batteries on this one probably weigh less. Or it may be, who knows? I'm almost certain to put out the equivalent amount of power and everything else that the nickel metal hydrides do on the older RAV4 hybrids. You can do that with a smaller, lighter lithium-ion battery, which has its advantages and limitations, just like anything else. The other thing that's remarkable about this car, and I think it has to do with the fact that it's not a conventional style continuously variable transmission, is it works really well. Matter of fact, let's do some fun here. Let's go over to our manual mode. We're in third, fourth. Took a while to get there to switch to fourth. Now we're in fifth. Yeah, it takes, it's not, I seem to remember on ours being, on the 19, it being a little more snappy. But that could be me. 6, I believe that's our top gear. Yeah. So on the manual side, you have 6 forward speeds. And I think due to the reason it's different, well, I was mentioning it's different from a conventional. I hope I missed that squirrel. Oh, I did. Instead of using you have 2 drums in a conventional continuously variable transmission, and then a steel belt between the 2 of them, and then the belt rides up and down on a cone, and that's where you get basically a limitless number of ratios, because it just slides up and down the cone depending on the engine RPM, the load on the engine, and everything else, and responds accordingly. Pretty cool, actually. So this engine, sorry, I was distracted by something. This continuously variable transmission is completely different. It has electric motors in it, two electric. There's like three, I believe, electric motors on there. There's one traction motor for the front wheels, there's a traction motor for the rear drivetrain, and then there's this intermediate motor that is part of the transmission. And that transmission motor is what is actually delivering the ratios of what you're doing. It's another reason why you can't have a completely dead hybrid system and just drive it along on gas power, because too much is powered by the hybrid system. It's a shame. I mean, we'd all love the idea, well, if it's gas or electric, I run out of gas, I just run on the electric, put along on that until I get to a gas station. Or if the electric goes out, I just run it on the gas engine and off I go. Well, no, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But what Toyota has done to counteract that is they've made the car really reliable. And you have to be a real blunderbutt to completely run out of gas, because like, this is something you'll notice on most modern cars. When you're on empty, you really do have fuel left, because they really don't want you running out of gas. Because if you run out of gas, depending on what vehicle you happen to be driving, it can actually cause some problems. They've fixed a lot of them, but I remember there was, years ago, there was fuel-injected Chevy pickups. The fuel injecting, if you ran it completely out of gas, it caused a lot of problems because the system had to be reprimed. They fixed this pretty quickly. They figured out a way around that so that wouldn't happen. But for a while there, I mean, it just, and the bottom line was just don't run it till it's dry. Don't be an idiot. But, you know, this is the United States of America, and you have a constitutional right to be an idiot. Or apparently you do. But they fixed that in time, so, but I would love to, you know, wouldn't it be fun if you do have two completely separate power systems that would enable, if one does fail or have a problem, you can continue on your way. On your way. Oh, which reminds me, when I give you a shot at the rear drivetrain on this vehicle, there's something I want to talk about that some of you owners of older RAV4 hybrids may not know about, and I will share this with you because there is the potential for a problem if you live in a salty area with the electrical power supply to the rear axle. Potential that it could happen due to a design. I wouldn't call it a flaw, I'd call it what would you call it? It's one of the places in Toyota engineering where they didn't use the belt and suspenders approach that they do with pretty much everything else. And if you don't live in an area with a whole lot of salt on the road, you don't have a problem. So welcome to your rear suspension on your RAV4 Hybrid. It is a multi-link setup, and as you can see, you have a large subframe here that all the suspension components bolt onto, and this in turn bolts into your unibody. Since this is not a body on frame, this is a unibody construction. And as you can see, you have your coil spring, you have a little bit of protective plastic right here, you have a leading link right there. There's your leading link right there. And it's a pretty straightforward setup, to be honest with you. There's nothing real complex about it. I like how clean these brand new coil springs are, unlike the ones on our car, which are muddy, a little bit of rust. You'll get to see the 19 in just a minute and compare and contrast, because I know how you guys like to compare and contrast. And then over here, move this over here just a little bit. Here's our passenger side, and as you can see, this is a very kind of a normal arrangement, but it's also a great combination of being constructed such that it's very sturdy. It's a good solid setup, but it's also fairly light in weight. Hence, you got the way it's just box construction rather than like big, huge pieces. I mean, you could do that with huge hunks of aluminum, but that would be kind of expensive. And I wouldn't be surprised if this weighs about the same as an aluminum arm would, if not maybe even less. But you also have your leading link over there, right there, and it's very, you know, it's pretty much de rigueur for modern compact SUV rear suspensions. Our differential is all the way up here, and this plastic cover is there to protect both the differential and even more importantly the electrical connection. Now I'll get more into that electrical connection on the 2019 model, because there was what could be called a minor issue with that, but I'll explain all that to you. But there is no physical contact or link, I should say, between the front drivetrain and the rear drivetrain. This is completely, oh, that's the stop, yeah. Apparently since I'm underneath here, the rear kick sensor for the rear hatch is on, and it thinks I'm a big foot, basically, and it's raising and lowering in gay abandon, because I'm moving around underneath here and it thinks I'm a foot. And I could turn it off, but I didn't bother. So if you hear that beep again, that's all that's happening, is the rear gate is opening and closing thinking I'm a foot. So what else do we have to show you? Well, I like this exhaust because it's a single exhaust that goes into this nice big fat mufflerage, and then on each side you got your outputs that are kind of cool. It's all a stylistic thing more than anything else, but I think it looks good. But anyway, going on to the where I was talking about this rear differential setup, that's basically the only link front to back, and there's a very long cable that runs from the electric motor hybrid battery whole ensemble, comes back to this rear axle, and that is all computer controlled about when the rear axle differential is actually given power by its electric motor to assist in traction. And like I mentioned when I'm driving the car, it comes on all the time. It doesn't really limit itself to when you have slippery conditions. Anything that will help your fuel economy and just generally help handling and everything else, that's when the rear axle will kick in. And naturally, since you have this motor back here, it also contributes to the regenerative braking, which helps recharge the battery and give it further range on the electric battery. So there you go. Anyway, it's a very nice riding suspension. It's nice and sturdy and has excellent travel, as I mentioned before. So good on you, RAV. Oh, one other thing, there is a generous amount of ground clearance for the most part. It's about mid-pack, I would say, with the compact SUVs, but it's good. And there are numerous versions. I think there's like some kind of wilderness version or some kind of the RAV4. There's like 7 different trims you can get just for the hybrid now, since that is, I believe, their most popular vehicle right now for Toyota. But you have these panels out here to increase your aerodynamic flow, as well as provide a little bit of protection when you're off-road. So there you go. By way of comparison, here we have to look at what happens after 70,000 miles or so to your RAV4 Hybrid. This is our car, which is stationed in the Northeast, where they put salt on top of salt on top of salt on the roadways, and we get our vehicles dirty because they go places that are not always paved. And as you can see, it's holding up very, very nicely overall. We don't have any major rust issues, and you may say, well, it's just, you know, it's 19, so it's just 4 years old, roughly 3.5, 4 years old. But you'd be amazed at what can go on up here with all the salt. So it's very similar, actually exactly like the 2023, and we do have our controversial the cable that's underneath here. You may have seen on some other YouTube videos there is a potential issue with salt and corrosion getting into the connection of a cable that runs all the way from the front all the way back here, the electrical cable that powers the rear differential for your rear wheel drive system. And car does have this guard on it right here to protect that, but it can still happen because the salt and things get everywhere. So what Toyota's done, I haven't heard anybody talk about this, especially all the people that are involved with what they like to call Cablegate, which I think is a bit of a silly term. Toyota's extended the warranty on, if you have a 2019, 20, 21, 20, whatever, if you have that problem and the cable does get corroded to the point that it causes a problem and no longer functions properly, Toyota will replace it free of charge. If you had it done before and this is not like a recall, it's like an extended warranty. And Toyota will replace it free of charge. If you had work done prior to this to take care of this situation when you had a problem with it, if you did, and I think the actual numbers are very, very small, they'll reimburse you for the money you spent on it. So you're covered, in other words. And it all has to do, I would recommend, if you want to see the details on this, go to the Car Care Nut. He is a nut, that guy. He's also a Toyota tech and a very, very nice gentleman. And he can help you with that because he will explain. He's got a video that explains exactly what I'm talking about, what the cable situation is. And like I said, as far as I know, it's really not a big deal at all. It hasn't happened to us. And like I said, we've already put 70,000 and like 4 winters on this thing. So, wow, it looks like we have a dent in that. I'm gonna have to look into that right there. What has my wife been doing now? Go around climbing over things with this vehicle. But anyway, that's what we look like after 70,000 miles. Thank you for viewing.
Well, okay then. So there we have 2 RAV4s. One is old, one is new, and one is the right one for you. Well, not the old one, because that's ours. But so how much does a new one cost? Well, the prices have gone up a bit, but it's still pretty reasonable for all the stuff you get. The Limited starts out at a $38,530 price point, and with all kinds of lovely options, the biggest being the Limited Grade Advanced Technology Package. You come out with a total sticker price of $43,454. That'll take you home, that right there. And what can I say? These are wonderful vehicles. It's not hard to see why they're so popular. So you guys take care out there. We'll see you on the next ride. And by all means, drive carefully. Take care, everybody.
Gesandt geworden, ist viel ein